Well, one book that a lot of people have been reading in recovery circles is the book Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke. I read the book recently and came away with a very clear message. From the book, she would be saying, studies have shown that if you will abstain from your dopamine flooded addictive behaviors, you can reset your dopamine baseline levels roughly at the 4-week mark. She goes on to say this will result in an easier recovery by reducing the cravings going forward because you will have reset your pain-pleasure balance. Easy peasy, right? Well, not easy peasy for the addicted person because she's very clear to say that for the first couple weeks, you're going to experience a lot of negative feelings and cravings. In one sense, she says it's going to get worse before it gets better. But really, by the 4-week period, you will already be feeling better. The book certainly brings out this clear time frame to get started on the road to freedom from your addiction. I shared that insight with a person close to me who was an even bigger contrarian than myself. And he said, "Really? Are you sure science backs that up?" I said, "Sure it does, because she's got all these credentials and has all these footnotes, and she's from the Stanford Medical Research, whatever." And but it got me thinking, and I started to do a little more research and found out that the science is actually not that clear cut. Apparently, it's way more complicated than that. So today on Finding Traction, we do a deeper dive on dopamine, the book Dopamine Nation, and more importantly, we look at the question, should I do a dopamine fast? Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, let me just say before I get to the idea of dopamine fast in the book, Dopamine Nation, let me just say if you are looking for recovery help, looking for support on what can prove to be a really difficult journey, I would love to connect with you. You can get a lot of help and support for free just by going on my Circle Learning app. You will see the sign up link is in the show notes. You can do it either on your phone by following the instructions there, or on your device or on your computer. Let me just say that there you'll get more information and be able to download a number of free resources. You'll also be able to watch the first couple of videos of the Finding Traction 52-week video recovery course that really takes you step by step through your first year of recovery. Now, in there, you'll also get information about our Finding Traction groups. It's a place that I lead guys. We walk through the course together, usually like 5 to 7 guys, and we're always starting new groups. This fall of 2025, we have a couple new groups that we're thinking of forming. So if you are interested in that, or you just want to arrange a free Zoom call with me and find a little bit more about my journey, what I have to offer, and tell me a little bit more about your story, I'd love to connect with you. If you want to do any of those things, you can connect with me at bandofbrothers.care at gmail.com. All right, let's get on with this whole idea of dopamine and dopamine fasts. Well, a couple of podcasts ago, I dealt with the topic, how long does it take to break a porn addiction? And then in that episode, I said, well, essentially, you're looking at a 3 to 4 month period to get new habits started and old habits to begin to drop away. But I really argued, and I spent the whole following podcast talking about some of the processes that you will need to spend over the year to develop the necessary anchors to retain long-term sobriety. And and again, that is an average. For some people, it is shorter than a year. For some people, it is longer. And I spoke about, again, some of those markers, some of the things that you're going to need to deal with so that you can experience long-term sobriety. And I also spoke fairly negatively about people who offer a shorter, easier solution. And I said those solutions are really doing people a disservice. 7 days to freedom, the 30-day challenge to break free. And I wondered where sometimes some of this thinking came from. And as I read the book Dopamine Nation, I thought, some people are using this book to contribute to these unrealistic claims. Now, I want to be fair to the book, but I also have some problems with the book. I love some things about the book, and I have some problems with the book. The author, Anna Lembke, is essentially saying you can reset the pain-pleasure balance in your brain by abstaining from your drug of choice for 4 weeks. In other words, the worst of the cravings will disappear, your low dopamine baseline will be reset, and you will be on your way to a full recovery. And the book makes it clear that the science is pretty clear on that, which is definitely an overstatement. Let me say what we do know from science. And then I'll try to be clear of what is not known or contested or is being overstated. This is what we know. In many addictive behaviors, substance abuse, gambling, porn, etc., research shows that the brain reward system changes. And yes, a key part of that system involves the neurotransmitter dopamine. Secondly, neuroimaging and animal studies, again, those are animal studies, indicate that after chronic, heavy use of an addictive substance, dopamine receptors to natural rewards may be reduced. There is less receptor responsibility in parts of the brain. That's loosely described as dopamine hypofunction, or another word you may have heard is anhedonia, or the inability to experience joy or pleasure as a new constant state. And it's also been seen that this also contributes to and explains the pattern of tolerance, where we need more of the substance or behavior to get the same effect or results that we had before. Why? Because we're now experiencing reduced pleasure, so we need more or different to get back to that earlier pleasurable state. All right? So we're good so far on that. But this is where we go from nice 4 or 5 inches of ice, and now we get out onto ice that's only 2 or 1 inches thick. You got that great Canadian ice example. And this is where we start getting on thinner ice. The idea that addictive behaviors result only from low dopamine is too simplistic. Addiction involves many systems, dopamine, but also other neurotransmitter, brain circuits, our environment, psychology, genetics, right? It's way more complicated than dopamine. It's not that simple. Here's another one. The notion of doing a dopamine fast, i.e. abstaining temporarily from pleasurable stimuli to reset your dopamine level, is not well supported by rigorous scientific studies. There is little direct evidence that such fast restores dopamine function to healthy baseline in any meaningful or lasting way. And finally, it can be misleading to think of a baseline dopamine level as a fixed thing that you can simply reset by short-term abstinence. Our brain functions as far more dynamic and context dependent. So, we are now getting into one of Vern's pet peeves. People who say, all you need to do is this. And I hate to say, but some people are seeing a dopamine fast as all you need to do is a dopamine fast. And it also gets to one of Vern's favorite sayings. It's complicated, right? It's not as simple as it's often made out to be. Now, I know we like simple. We like something that's easy to understand because it gives us a sense of control. All you need to do is this. I found the key, right? And, that's where maybe some of the short-term programs rely exclusively on a one-size-fits-all approach. Now, I want to be fair to the book Dopamine Nation and Lemke's book because just because people use her book to oversimplify the path of recovery doesn't mean it's all her fault. You can't put it all at her feet. At the same time, I think in fairness, she doesn't acknowledge the limitations of her approach, and I think she tempts people to adopt the simplistic solution of a dopamine fast as the key to their recovery. Now, to be fair to her again, you could say, yeah, but Vern, all she's really talking about in her book is the role of dopamine in addiction, right? But, and don't get me wrong, I actually really, really like this book. It's more of what it doesn't say and how people are using it. First of all, I loved her incredible vulnerability. She starts by talking about how her reading of romance novels led to an entire addiction with erotica and how it affected her life and her family. I mean, she has this amazing story of lying to her children about eating their Halloween chocolate. I mean, it's hilarious. First of all, anyone that is willing to put that degree of vulnerability into a book has got me applauding enthusiastically. I love the connection she makes between the long-term use of heavy dopamine flooding activities, such as porn, and the resulting sense of anhedonia, a low sense of pleasure, a reduced sense of being able to experience pleasure that now can begin to pervade our life. Again, the word anhedonia is about the inability to experience joy or pleasure. Well, one of the most amazing quotes I heard in an interview with her, I'm not sure if it was her, she that said it or the interviewer that said this: addiction is the progressive narrowing of the things that bring us pleasure. Let me say that again. Addiction is the progressive narrowing of the things that bring us pleasure. And I guess you could say the opposite. Recovery is the progressive expansion of the things that bring us pleasure. And both of those ring true for my life. I mean, isn't that what we want? We want an expansion of things that bring us pleasure, simple things, normal things. I use this phrase, wide open spaces. I just love that idea. And another thing I like about her book is she makes some sort of acknowledgement that some people have found that trying to use moderation can work in their addiction recovery. But she goes on, almost every example that she gives of people shows that really that was a fool's errand, that for most of the people she deals with, abstinence is really the only path forward in their recovery. It's like us to the alcoholic saying a light beer can help you in your alcoholism, or to us saying, let's use light porn instead of heavy porn kind of thing. And most of us know, again, that that's a fool's errand. Where I think the book fails is number one, it fails to say where further work is needed. It overstates the science, or say where the science is still untested in hard double-blind studies. And I think in one sense, she either wittingly or unwittingly leads people to oversimplification. For example, she only gives cursory attention to what I call cue-based addictive behavior. Let's say, for example, you have been a heavy smoker for years, and you start the day with a cup of coffee and what? And a smoke, right? And most of us would know, do you honestly think that you won't still be craving a cigarette as you sit for your morning coffee week 5 or week 6? And most of us go, well, not likely. Those environmental cues have been so embedded in us habitually. She uses a great example of, again, I'm playing both sides of the fence here. She has a great example of a person addicted to sports gambling. And she does say for that person not only had to stop gambling, with sports stuff, they had to remove all the cues from their environment. So, this would be a reason for me never to start sports gambling. They had to stop watching sports. They had to stop listening to sports talk radio. So in one sense, she does talk about that. But I think that it still leads to a sense of those cues are going to still be present in your environment and much longer after the 4-week period. The other thing that I think she does get to is says, a dopamine fast can help you in a short term over the worst of the cravings. And that's true. But let me just say, negative feelings and emotions can come up at any time. And sure, there may be a short period of time where you can get over cravings, but you're going to have to learn to deal with negative emotions that come up with a fight, with something at work, week after week, month after month. And that is something she doesn't really get into, of how to deal with negative emotions after the 4-month period. And again, some of the Anna Lembke fans are going, well, no, Vern, she's only talking about dopamine and addiction. It's important to recognize you're still going to continue to experience cues. You're still going to experience negative emotions, and you have to learn to deal with that in a holistic way. You're going to need more in-depth recovery strategies. I think she talks a little bit about other people, and her book is primarily examples from personal therapy, but I think she gives short shrift to really talking about the value of community and this necessity of community. We can do what I can't. In all fairness, some of her examples of needing other people come out more in her interviews than they do in her book. And the book is primarily written on an individualistic basis. All right, so you say, Vern, you're going back and forth. I can see where people can misuse the book or oversimplify it, or even use it to suggest a much shorter time frame than is actually really needed to recover from something as complex as our deeply embedded dependence on porn. So let's go back to this question. Should I do a dopamine fast? Well, the answer is sure. It could be a great tool to start you on your recovery journey. But just to be clear here, it's starting you on your recovery journey. For example, you've heard, if you've listened to me for any period of time, and not that everyone listens and does everything I say, it's hard for me to imagine, but one of the things I talk about is guys walking around with an IV drip into their veins that gives them little shots of dopamine and arousal as a solution to their porn binges. In other words, things like people habitually use social media to get little hits. And for that reason, I say, let's do a 30 to 60 day social media fast to really remove that short-term dependence you have on this arousal habit you have in your life. And some of you are going, gee, that sounds a lot like a dopamine fast, Vern. And I guess in that way, it does. So, should I do a dopamine fast? Yes, sure, go for it. But just be aware that it won't do everything you hope it does, and it needs to be part of a much wider and longer recovery strategy. We'll see you next time.